Right. Good morning, everyone. It's 11 o'clock. I'd like to welcome you to the Regional Fire Service Study Board meeting. Today is February 2nd. I'd like to call this meeting to order. Let's start off with a salute to the flag. Member Anderson, if you can lead us, please.
Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you so much. Madam Clerk, may we please have roll call?
Chair Mary Luz Garcia.
Here.
Vice Chair Joe Rodriguez.
Here.
City of Reno Brandy Anderson.
Here.
City of Sparks Paul Anderson.
Here.
Washoe County Clara Andriola.
Present.
City of Reno Miguel Martinez.
Here.
Deputy District Attorney Jennifer Gustafson.
Present.
Yes. Gustafson, I apologize. And City of Sparks City Clerk Lisa Hunterman and I am present. We do have a quorum.
Thank you. And thank you for being here today.
Thank you.
Let's close out item number 2 and move into item number 3. Ms. Matievich.
Good morning, Madam Chair. For the record, Cadence Matievich, Government Affairs Liaison for Washoe County. Item number 3 is your first item of general public comment. Comment heard under this item will be limited to 3 minutes per person and may pertain to matters both on and off the board agenda. However, action may not be taken on any matter raised during public comment periods until the matter is specifically listed on agenda as an action item. Comments are to be made to the board as a whole and are limited to 3 minutes. There is a timer for those who wish to come forward. Thank you.
Thank you.
And at this time, we do have one public comment, Deanne Radcliffe.
Move all of that because I'm going to use the thing. Sorry, guys. Sorry, it's a low-tech happy presentation. Good morning. Thank you all for your service. My name is Deanne Radcliffe, and I am a Nevada native and a resident in Verdi. I would like to share my observations on fire and levels of service. Yes. Do you want me to rotate it? Okay. I wasn't sure if it was going to capture it. Thank you. I appreciate that. Let's make it straight. All right. So, have all governmental agencies, the City of Reno, City of Sparks, and Washoe County, implemented the level of fire service that residents pay for? What are the elected officials saying? Here's our comment here. So, I've been involved in Verdi issues for over 25 years. What can the City of Reno residents living in Verdi expect? Another comment. This is pretty exciting. Okay. A lot going on that slide. Sorry. So basically, this is fire safety for the Meridian 120 South project. As you can see, meeting stretched from 2017 to 2024. Fire safety was brought up at every single meeting for years. Despite written promises in the Mortons and Garson agreement, fire was not addressed by the city. This gets more fun. All right, it was decided that 1608 would be the per door fee for some of the 3,000 plus homes in Mortons and Garson. Only some of them, not all of them. As everyone is aware, this will not pay to build. It will certainly not provide equipment or staff a fire station. Looking at the fiscal impact analysis for just one of the Mortons and Garson projects and the Santerre Quilcy, there's going to be $24.2 million. It'll be a net surplus to the city. Again, the city removed the residential fire station requirement and accepted a sum of $300,000. And now Truckee Meadows provides service via mutual aid. So again, those homes have sprinklers. They removed the residential fire station requirement, and now Truckee Meadows provides all of the aid. Headed back to my original question, have all governmental agencies implemented the level of fire service that residents pay for. Thank you for your time. And kudos to your AV people. They were super kind to me. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
That is all of the public comment that we have in chambers. If we have anybody attending virtually that would like to speak, please use the raise your hand feature.
Thank you. And I'd like to welcome Senator Skip Daly. Thank you for joining us again today. We can go ahead and close out item number 3, public comment, and move into item number 4.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Item number 4 is approval of the minutes for the Regional Fire Services Study Board meeting of December 12th, 2025. Board members may identify any actions or corrections to the draft minutes as prepared, and the minutes were provided in your packet and have been posted online.
All right, looking to my board, any questions or discussion regarding the minutes that were provided to us? If not, looking for a motion to approve.
Move to approve.
All right, I've got member Paul Anderson for the first, and then we'll get a second from Brandy Anderson. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion carries. Item number 5, Ms. Matievich.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Item number 5A1 is a presentation by Truckee Meadows Fire Protection District Chief Richard Edwards, City of Reno Fire Chief Dave Cochran, and City of Sparks Fire Chief Walt White on the history of regional fire service delivery and governance across Reno, Sparks, and Washoe County. Gentlemen, when you are ready, please begin.
Chairperson Garcia, members of the Fire Study Board, for the record, Walter White, Fire Chief, City of Sparks. Each of us will come up and share a portion of this presentation. I drew the stick to go lead off here, so I'll start with the first slide. So, history of the regional fire service between Reno, Sparks, Washoe County, just a general overview. All 3 agencies provide 5 essential public services: fire suppression, emergency medical service, hazardous materials mitigation, technical rescue, and community risk reduction, also known as fire prevention. We have some very, a lot of very common similarities, but we have also some very unique and distinct differences between our agencies as well when it comes to our governing structure, our staffing levels, and just size and general call volume. And so with that, major service delivery changes since 2000. As you're mostly well aware that on July 1 of 2000, the Truckee Meadows Fire Protection District Board of Commissioners, the Washoe County Commissioners, entered into an interlocal agreement with the City of Reno to take over fire protection services. This was influenced primarily by financial difficulties and a nationwide regionalization movement. The district retained ownership of all its assets and stations. However, the status of all district employees changed to the City of Reno. In July 1 of 2012, there was a separation or a dissolution of this, and there was a transition plan to redirect services amongst the 2 agencies. In between, the City of Sparks passed a resolution to cooperate in regional efforts without fully joining the reorganization. That change to separate was due largely to a collapse in the Nevada housing values. Property taxes fell dramatically, and cost of labor and services increased at the same time, which outpaced the revenue that was coming in. There was also Reno's planned annexations, which made the agreement relatively unsustainable. As I mentioned, there are several very common similarities amongst our agencies, but also some very unique or distinct differences. We have square mile differences from 112 square miles in Reno, 37 square miles, and all of the unincorporated area outside of the city limits, which falls under the Truckee Meadows Fire Protection District, which is thousands of square miles. Reno has 15 stations, Sparks has 6, and Truckee Meadows has 11. Our staffing levels range from 100 to 300 personnel, call volumes from 17,000 to 51,000 over last year. Average response times are very close to similar, 6-7 minutes, with some extended response times in the more rural areas of the district. Population levels are very similar in both Truckee Meadows and Reno, or excuse me, Truckee Meadows and Sparks, but their population of 281,714 at the last census for Reno. Sparks and Truckee Meadows are 111,000 and 100,000 plus, respectively. Reno established Advanced Life Support Services in 2014, Sparks in 2017, and Truckee Meadows in 2012. Reno has started a single role paramedic program, and both Sparks and Truckee Meadows are exploring that program today. Reno has a staffing level of 4 per company. Sparks has 3 per company, and Truckee Meadows has a combination of 3 on the engines, 4 on the trucks. The Sparks Fire Department applied for a SAFER grant to try and add a 4th person to each truck, but were not successful in obtaining that grant. Our labor representation, there are 2 separate labor representation groups. Both Sparks and Reno are represented by Local 731, and Truckee Meadows professional firefighters by Local 2487. Reno and Sparks both have a mayor, city government style of governance, and Truckee Meadows is a special district under NRS 474, making them more of a dependent special district. Those are some of the unique differences. So you can see we have some challenges when it comes to governing structure and operational practices. But at the same time, there are many more commonalities, similarities between what the 3 agencies do. Not included in this, because the Senate bill covered all of Washoe County, is the North Lake Tahoe fire, which includes Incline Village and Crystal Bay. And when you talk about from a regional perspective, they are really kind of bifurcated from us. In fact, their closest auto aid partners are primarily from the California side. And in fact, they are dispatched out of Grass Valley in California. So with that, the dispatch is another challenge for our agencies. Reno and Sparks have their own dispatch centers. Reno's is capable of EMD. Sparks is run through Sparks PD, and we do not have any EMD capable. But we also have a franchise agreement that requires that the call determinants be decided by REMSA through an interlocal agreement. So in 2012 was the separation. I'll let Chief Edwards talk a little bit more about the Blue Ribbon Commission that came out. But as far as the growth and development, that's somewhat of a context. And when it gets to Senate Bill 319, we have Skip Daly here, Senator Skip Daly with us today, and he was the author of that. And that bill, although modified, was passed and signed by the governor into law, which required the establishment of a fire study board. And this is the composition of the fire study board, 2 from each of the governing bodies, where a vote has to be a majority with at least 1 from each of the member agencies voting in favor of. I know you have a very daunting task, so it required that we put out a request for proposals and seek the most responsive, responsible bidder, which I'm happy to say was Emergent Global Solutions, who are here in the room today, to be the consultant to identify feasibility and efficiency options for collaboration and consolidation at whatever level that may be. So I know that you are tasked with producing a report by December of 2026 per the regulation. We have next slide. So both Reno and Sparks are municipal fire departments and serve the city areas. And Truckee Meadows serves all the unincorporated areas of the county. And as I mentioned, that's hundreds of thousands of square miles. We have certain contracts for services that we've used historically, automatic aid, mutual aid, interlocal agreements. One of the biggest being our CWPP or our our WFPP partnership, which includes Nevada Department of Forestry. And that's how we receive the state and federal reimbursement for large-scale incidents that we all contribute to. Our operational alignment, I'm happy to say we're making progress there, that we have actually adopted the 3 first common standard operating guidelines amongst the agencies. We're doing more joint training and collaboration, but we have a ways to go. When it gets to legal consolidation, that occurs under the authority of the governing bodies. Now, there's 2 parallel tracks. There's a procedural track, and then there's a political track that goes along with it, and that is largely about information sharing and understanding. So in 2002, Sparks wanted to maintain autonomy and local control, which is some of the sentiment I heard when I arrived here in 2023. However, I have heard that change, and there is more interest in cross-silo collaboration, but to what extent is unknown. I think we can go next slide. So I've already mentioned the 2026 Fire Regionalization Study, and we are here to provide you as much information as we can and support the best outcome that we can get because of how vital fire and EMS services are to this region and the Washoe County. Go next slide. So Reno volunteer companies started back in the 19th century. However, currently only Truckee Meadows Fire Protection District has any volunteer staff left. They have 50 volunteer firefighters on staff. Both Reno and Sparks are paid professional departments and not combination departments. I think, Dave, you were here and you probably remember the leather hoses. Were those heavy, by the way? Yeah. So I'm sure that they can offer you a lot more about their individual. Sparks was organized in 1905 and Reno was 1888, but the departments are close to that age. And over that time, there was a transition towards full-time career firefighters and away from combination or volunteer staff. The service, the scope has expanded over time. I'll go to the next one. In 1972 is when Truckee Meadows was established by Washoe County. District governance and funding was created. Service all the unincorporated communities. District footprint has expanded over time to include portions of the Sierras. It's basically the district around the cities. So Sparks has 37 square miles and Reno has 112 square miles, 3 of which are Truckee River. And Truckee Meadows Fire Protection District covers all the unincorporated area outside of those city boundaries. And if we can go to the next one. In 2002, and I do have a copy of the resolution, Sparks adopted a policy resolution affirming their municipal government structure, emphasizing the local elected representation, their desire to maintain their autonomy and their local control over their fire district. So we were not part of the previous consolidative attempt. However, as I'm happy to say that I have heard that perspective and a lot more interest in really exploring what the possibilities are, more of a cross-silo collaboration type of philosophy compared to where the city's position was in 2002. So we support regional collaboration efforts, did as back in 2002, but just not willing to participate more fully in the consolidative efforts at that time. So they did not support the government consolidation or moving from their current government structure, and it was a unanimous vote, and I do have a copy of that resolution for you. So, all right, next. So 2000 and Truckee Meadows and Reno were one agency from 2000 to 2012. And then the contract for service model was used. Operational integration during contract period, separate government structures remained. Costs and services expectations discussed, and the contract ended in 2012. And next slide. Oh, you want to take that one? I'll let Chief Edward, if we could go forward just one more.
On the Reno one.
Okay, go back to the Reno one. I'll let you handle that one.
Thank you, Chief. And if we could just pause for a moment, we're 7 slides in, and I just wanted to check in with the board members to see if they had any specific questions on the history. But more than anything, this is a non-action item. And thank you, Vice Chair Rodriguez, for bringing this idea forward that we could kick off today's meeting with all of this important historical context. So we'll pause here. If no questions, we'll keep trucking along. Okay, we'll go ahead and wait. Thank you so much.
Great, thank you. Dave Cochran, Reno Fire Chief. I'm just going to speak to the Reno piece of this for a minute, and then I'm going to turn it over to Chief Edwards, who's going to get into more detail about TM and service they provide. So as Chief mentioned, from 2000 to 2012, we were, use different words, consolidated, but the reality is that City of Reno provided fire service to the city and to the unincorporated county under the umbrella of the Reno Fire Department. So everybody was a Reno Fire employee. They all wore Reno Fire uniforms. And there was a contract for service that the county paid for their portion of the fire service delivery. I was not here in 1888, but I was here for all of that. And I did work in the station. Sometimes in my head, I think of the TM stations as being a certain number because they were a different number when I worked at them than they are now. I'll tell you from an operational standpoint, highly effective. That was a very good model. When you control all the pieces, you can control all the assets, you can be more efficient and intentional on that service delivery. So I'm a big supporter of that. Later on in the presentation, I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the challenges that we faced. And I think that those challenges are kind of what this board is tasked with, finding a path forward or recommending a path forward. As Chief mentioned, the contract for service ended in 2012. And probably since that time, we've been talking about ways to get the band back together going forward. So I think that's where we are now. I'm going to turn it over to Chief Edwards now. He's going to take the Truckee Meadows portion of this.
Good morning, Chair and board members. Richard Edwards, Fire Chief at Truckee Meadows Fire and Rescue. We're going to go back a slide here. All right, so Truckee Meadows Fire Protection District was created under NRS 474, County Fire Protection Districts. In 1972, 12 Truckee Meadows Fire Protection District volunteer companies came together and were established through the county to provide emergency services to the unincorporated areas of Washoe County. The first 2 career fire department stations in Truckee Meadows were opened in 1974, and currently today we have 10 career stations and 6 volunteer stations. The district framework under NRS 474 provides for the dedicated funding and an independent governing board, which is the Board of Fire Commissioners. Over time, growth patterns expanded the district's scope and responsibilities, And regional growth has also created a checkerboard of jurisdictional boundaries between the cities and the districts. So in 2004, the Sierra Forest Fire Protection District began evaluating fire service alternatives. A preferred alternative at the time was a contract for service model with the Truckee Meadows Fire Protection District. Sierra Forest was administered by the Nevada Division of Forestry during that time, affecting some of their administration or administrative options. In 2006, the Board of Fire Commissions directed staff to enter into an interlocal agreement between the state of Nevada, Washoe County, and the Sierra Fire Protection District on or around July 1st of 2006, essentially transferring the Sierra Forest Fire Protection District to a county-operated 473 district. In 2008, the 473 or NRS 473 was dissolved, and the Sierra Fire Protection District, an independent district under NRS 474, was established. Important to note also at this time, the tax rate was also raised from 42 cents to 52 cents per $100 of assessed value during this transition. So in June of 2011, the Truckee Meadows Fire Protection District Governing Board voted to terminate the interlocal agreement with the city of Reno. The operational separation actually took effect on July 1st of 2012. And following the separation, Truckee Meadows Fire Protection District resumed independent operation as an operating agency. During this general period, Truckee Meadows Fire Protection District and Sierra Fire Protection District engaged in operational and regionalization consolidation discussions and opportunities. Truckee Meadows Fire Protection District Governing Board records from late 2011 reflect votes that supported conditions for operational alignment between those agencies. In 2013, Washoe County initiated the Blue Ribbon Committee review related to regional fire services. The review assessed the system of providers serving the region, and it examined potential efficiency opportunities and operational innovations. The Blue Ribbon process established 15 recommendations, including regional collaboration, automatic aid, emergency preparedness, fire-adapted communities, and public-private partnerships. This work is part of the record of periodic regional evaluation efforts that inform later discussions and studies. During 2015, operational and legal steps towards consolidation between Truckee Meadows Fire Protection District and Sierra Fire Protection District continued. The Nevada statutes under NRS 474 provided authority for consolidating county fire protection districts. Washoe County adopted Ordinance 1577 in March of 2016, and the consolidation became effective July 1st of 2016. With that, a new tax rate was also adopted of 54 cents per $100 of assessed value. Sierra Fire Protection District ceased to exist as a separate district at the end of June of 2016, and Truckee Meadows Fire Protection District assumed the consolidated district footprint for the affected service areas. And I'm going to hand this off to Chief Cochran now for the rest of it.
All right, so I will bring this home for us. So that's kind of the history of, through the consolidation and separation. Like I said, since then, we've really been, in the royal way, the cities and the county have been looking and experimenting with different options of how we can more effectively provide fire service to the region. Because as you are all aware, fire emergencies, none of that respects jurisdictional boundaries. And that's why it's so important that we work together and collaborate as best as we can. We've updated some mutual aid and automatic aid agreements. Over the course of this time, I'm going to come back to the financial issues. One of the other changes that TM made was the branding. They're now known as Truckee Meadows Fire and Rescue, and that reflects the move towards all-risk service, which we need in this valley because we have all the risks. I tell people, we're kind of on an island in a sense. We have the mountains to the west, the desert to the east, to south and north, we run out of population pretty quick. So if we can't handle it, help is a long ways away. And that's why that cross-jurisdictional collaboration is also so important. And that brings us to where we are today. So we've talked about Senate Bill 319, and Senator Daley is here. He championed that bill, brought that forward, which led to the creation of this board. The interlocal agreement dictated under that bill or established under that bill defines the scope of this process and what we're going to do going forward. And really, I think, I'm not speaking for the board, but I think what I've heard is that we want to consider all of the options. We want to know what's available out there and not get tunnel vision, not get channeled into a single solution, because we don't know when we get to the end of the study, what the recommendation is going to be. And I know we're going to talk more about the study later, or you are. But I will point out at the bottom there, the real focus, I mentioned how operationally, when we were with Truckee Meadows under a contract for service, operationally, it was exceptional, I would say. But we found some challenges kind of after the fact with the governance and funding. And, that's like most things. When you come together, you don't think there's going to be a problem. You think it's going to work out great. And then when it doesn't, then you find out where the real pain points are. And I think that's part of the challenge here. And part of the goal here is to identify those pain points and figure out what a feasible path forward is. I mentioned the regional collaboration. We have continued to try and work together. Obviously, we've not come anywhere near a full-throated consolidation, but we have an automatic aid agreement between Truckee Meadows and Reno. There's an enhanced aid agreement between Truckee Meadows and Sparks. We've always had the triad my whole career, which is the hazmat team, which operates jointly across all three jurisdictions. We do have separate dispatch centers, which is a challenge, but we're working on that as well. I think as you are all aware, we interface and coordinate with REMSA. That's the EMS transport provider, of course, in the area, which you're all aware of. And then the mutual aid, I mentioned emergencies don't respect jurisdictional boundaries. We've been here for the big fires, the Washoe Drive fire, the Collin Ranch fires, the Pine Haven fires, the Davis fire. So those are just large scale examples of why that collaboration is so important. And then we've really expanded. Chief Dwight mentioned the SOGs that we've adopted. We've tried to expand the ways that we are working together short of consolidation. And that goes to training as well. In fact, there is a cross-jurisdictional training going on right now up in the North Valleys between Truckee Meadows is hosting, but I know Reno's participating as well. And then I'll come back to kind of the three pain points that we identified. The governance, how is everybody going to be recognized and have a vote in this process? And this board is actually a micro example of how that can work. The funding, of course, is going to be a challenge because we mentioned the different service levels, the different call volumes, the different demands on the different jurisdictions and departments. How are we going to pay for that in a fair and equitable manner across jurisdictions? And I think that those two things are really the key. We want everybody to make sure to understand and know that they are being fairly represented and are being fairly tasked with providing the funding for whatever comes out at the other end of this. And then I mentioned the legacy financial issues. There were some things that once we separated, we being Truckee Meadows and Reno, we found there were problems with who owns that, who's going to pay for this. Of course, going in, you don't think that's going to be a problem, but then you find out later on. And so we want to hopefully identify those issues going into any agreement or any path forward that we go down as a result of the study. So we've used multiple models over time, from municipal department to the district to the hybrid models. The current study, and I obviously am not prejudging or pre-directing where that's going to go, but those are the things that are going to be looked at. What does that model look like as far as governance? What does it look like as far as funding? I'll let the representatives from emerging growth talk about that. But then the future options are going to be brought to this board, and we look forward to seeing what the result of the study is. So with that, my next question slide is not there. So any questions? We're all here at your disposal.
Thank you so much for the joint presentation, Chiefs. I appreciate your time and energy in preparing this for us. I'll kick it over to Vice Chair Rodriguez. This was your request, and I think it was a great suggestion. So I'll hand it off to you for your initial thoughts and questions.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I guess I know it was kind of sort of covered, kind of the divorce, if you will. I guess can you explain a little bit more, like what led to that? Was it purely the finances of it, or was there more to it than that?
So I think and I was not in this position then, so this is a little bit downstream of actually participating in that. But my feeling was that, and I mentioned the governance and funding a couple of times, and being in a position where you're just paying for it, but you have no voice in it, and that's what the county was, I think was problematic. And I think that's the kind of thing that we're trying to avoid going forward.
And then I know we didn't, it's my understanding that we're looking at fire and EMS, closest help, things like that. That's kind of the preview of this board. And with that, like to your point, tunnel vision, in regards to RIMSA, I know that was mentioned on the slide, working with them as well. I guess I kind of like where we are now to where we are. One of the things that is making sure that we're getting closest help, right? The closest unit. Are we having those discussions between the three agencies, like the closest ambulance, the closest fire engine?
We're having those discussions now, and I imagine, again, without pre-directing what the board is going to do, that would be an essential part of what the study would include, because as I mentioned, when you control all the pieces, which I think would ultimately be the goal in whatever form or fashion that takes, you want to deploy, I call it, getting the right resource to the right call at the right time.
Mm-hmm.
And that could be anything from a ladder truck and a bunch of fire engines to just an ambulance.
And I think that's really all I have for now. I think we'll be more for vendors in the next one.
Thank you, Vice Chair. I'll start over here to my left with Member Andriola, and then we'll just kind of swing down the dais and give everybody an opportunity to ask a question. Okay. Thanks, Chief. I was wondering if from Sparks, who was referencing the annexing issues and the challenges of Reno accessing property and land in the 2000s and why that became a big challenge for Sparks. I was wondering if you could come up and talk to us, just give us a little bit of the reasoning of why operationally that annexing was a challenge for Sparks. And
I really don't have much more information than it was one of those relationship factors at the time as what was being annexed. And
so it was feelings.
Yeah, primarily between the city and the county.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate it. The other thing I wanted to ask, if I know that there's been a ton of progress made about dispatch in the last year since we've been discussing this, and anybody that knows anything about fire and emergency response knows that dispatch and getting it right is the number one hinge pin here of being able to regionalize or consolidate it in any way. So could you just give us an update operationally about where we are and why that matters?
Yes, and you are spot on in terms of dispatch being the linchpin. If we figure out the dispatch piece, that's in my view like 3/4 of the challenge, and then the rest of it will flow from there. Member Andriola is on the Northern Nevada Public Health Board, and so she was there when they talked about this, the board meeting last week. I might have the date wrong, but the direction from that board was to move forward with pushing that dispatch piece forward, a consolidated dispatch, including EMD, which is essential to EMS delivery, because that's what identifies what resource we need to send right on the front end. Fire, the hazmat, the other issues, they're pretty obvious, but EMS being the majority of the calls that all of us run, that really is driven by that EMD piece. And so we are moving that forward. That's going to go forward irrespective of the study. But I think the study and that piece are going to merge pretty seamlessly when all is said and done, because it is an obvious key piece of what we're going to do in terms of any sort of regional approach.
Okay. One more question. Oh, go ahead.
Hi, Chief Edwards. just additional information to that. So in November, part of this study board, the regionalization board, there's an operations group that met in November, and part of that conversation was regional dispatch. And through that meeting, all the partner agencies had agreed to continue to work on regional dispatch and looking at models. So we even looked to Southern Nevada. Clark County actually has an agreement with Las Vegas and North Las Vegas Fire where they do regional dispatch. And so they have that under an interlocal agreement. It's about a 6-page document that's been around for over 30 years. Spoken with them, they said that all works great. Kind of share that information with this group, really help to garnish the support of each of the individual agencies, because at the end of the day, that's what we really need is regional dispatch, because that's going to help us make sure that we get to Chief Cochran's point about getting the most appropriate unit to the most at the call to the right time and so forth. And we can do that under regional dispatch where we have one single point to dispatch all those units. So that work is continuing today. We continue to have those conversations, drafting, interlocal agreements and so forth to look at that. But it's a much more complex challenge other than just having an agreement. Today we have 3 or 4 different dispatch centers depending on the agencies. So trying to figure out how do we have a custodian record for employees? How do we dispatch resources? Because we all kind of do it a little bit different. How do we also integrate Hexagon into this conversation as well? Because that's also going to add some additional efficiency. So there's a lot of work to be done there. But no, on the back end, the chiefs and our counterparts are working on that right now, because we do know that that's going to help us to provide the absolute best level of service to the community.
Okay, thank you.
Just add on, it is absolutely central to collaboration, consolidation, whatever we want to do here locally. We're currently operating out of 4 separate dispatch systems, and that also means we're competing for employees amongst each other as well. This current system used by Sparks Fire and Reno it's a legacy Tiburon system that is no longer going to be supported. So we really don't have a choice. We need to move. Hexagon was selected. The original go live date training was supposed to be September of last year. We're now looking at adjusting that to September of this year because there were many problems identified that needed to be worked out, a lot with mobile field reporting. So optimistically, we should have a system. What it will do is it'll allow us to have AVL amongst all the units so we can actually see who's closest, help eliminate the engineered delay or unnecessary delay of call transfers right now. So that's probably going to be one of the greatest technological improvements in the region when that is fully integrated, but we still need to move towards a regional dispatch center and a governing structure so that we're all on the same page, because there's certain things we can do today with today's technologies and relationships, and there's certain things that with that new technology that will enable us to do.
So what's it going to take for us to get from where we are after we train on Hexagon starting in September, theoretically, to this regional dispatch? What's in between there that we need to address?
We'd still be separate dispatch centers, but we would have, the interoperability. So our computer-aided dispatch centers could communicate and we could see each other's resources and availability, which would lend us to dispatching the closest available appropriate resource more accurately. However, ultimately, I think it would be good for all fire agencies to be under one regional dispatch center, because it addresses several of the challenges we have today.
Okay. Other than redundancy, which is critical, what is the benefit of having 4? Is there, or is it just attrition that is unnecessary and we're just going through the growing pains of optimizing?
There is a requirement that you have a backup system, because if the county system goes down, calls can be transferred to one of the cities and vice versa.
Right.
But there really isn't a benefit that I can see of having 4 separate dispatch centers. And to Chief Edwards' point, the custodian of of data and records and everything. It's a lot cleaner when it's coming from one, the transparency is better and the data's cleaner and the operational efficiency is enhanced through a regional dispatch center.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Great, thank you. Member Martinez? Member Paul Anderson? I have a question on slide number 15. The topic of definitions came up a lot in our first meeting when we were reviewing the RFP. If staff could pull it up, I'm not sure if you have time to pull it up. It's slide 15 under the title Current Regional Coordination Activities, just for the sake of the folks that are listening to at this meeting. In your own words, can you tell us the difference between the automatic aid and enhanced aid as defined?
So I'll speak to automatic aid, and then I think either Chief Edwards or Chief White can speak about the enhanced aid. And I'll contrast automatic aid with mutual aid. So mutual aid is what we all do together, and that requires a request. So I need help. I'm going to call the county. I'm going to call Sparks, and they're going to send somebody. Automatic aid is just what it sounds like. That request is not necessary. It's built into the system so that under whatever circumstances or parameters you define in dispatch, that aid is going to come automatically. You don't need to make a request. You don't need to check with somebody or get approval. It's just part of the system. So it's much more seamless, much more effective. Not quite as seamless and effective as, say, a consolidation or a regionalization, but it does get you a long way down the road in terms of getting that right resource, the right call at the right time. So.
Hi, Richard Edwards for the record. Enhanced aid is essentially just automatic aid. It's a term that we use here in this region. And with our partnership for Sparks, we have certain areas where we have Truckee Meadows Firehouse is closer to Sparks than a Sparks Firehouse. And so we will automatically just respond to that area and handle the call. The call never gets transferred back and forth or anything like that. Similarly, we have jurisdictions that are closer to a Sparks Firehouse than a TM Firehouse, and they just respond to that area. And so that's essentially what the automatic aid is.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions before we move on? All right, Vice Chair Rodriguez.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just kind of want to follow up. Again, as we look to regionalize or consolidate, what have you, I don't want this population to be forgotten. So with Pyramid Lake, I understand it's a sovereign nation. They have their own governance. But with that being said, it is our neighbors. We have get a lot of visitors out there. So I'm understanding that they may be losing their fire department due to lack of funding, for better words. So are we talking to them while we have these discussions? I understand, again, their own governance, but what's the communication looking like?
Yeah, we've had some communication with Fire Chief Don Pelt, who's out there at Pyramid Lakes. And we're aware of some of their challenges, but there hasn't been any, formal plan. But fortunately, being part of the fire service means you're part of probably one of the best master mutual aid systems in the nation. So if there is a large scale event or incident out there, we're all going to provide support, and that'll be primarily under the WFPP agreement. So it's not that they would be left out or an afterthought, but the harsh reality is you can have the level of public safety that you can either afford or willing to pay for. And there are some funding challenges that limits the amount of staff that they can provide, but they're a great regional partner, and we look forward to working with them any way we can.
I guess kind of just follow up on that. Wildfire, as you guys said, there's no boundaries. So if they are looking to lose their fire department for the rest of the county that could potentially be at risk from a wildfire or something like that, are we looking to try to be present, more aware there, or?
Well, one of the things that occurred last year was Reno took on the Reno Tahoe Airport fire department but there is, when you talk governing structures, now you are talking a sovereign nation and different governing structure altogether. So that would require, it's probably more of a interlocal agreement as far as coverage would go. But, I think we're always going to be mindful that we have a good partner there, and we want to make sure that they survive and are helping take care of them as well.
So, and with that, so like, my main concern is going to be a wildfire risk coming from the reservation. So like talking about BLM or BIA if they have a crew or anything like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, and that's what the WFPP is part of. It's NDF, BIA, BLM, and our local agencies are all party to that interlocal agreement.
Thank you, Chief.
And just one more point of clarification. So one of the distinctions between auto aid and enhanced auto aid is, like Chief Edwards had mentioned, if there's a call, it's a medical call, and they happen to have a closer engine and REMS has a closer ambulance, our crews wouldn't even be dispatched. There's an agreement that the closest available resources would go handle that call and vice versa, where Reno has enhanced aid with, or has auto aid with both of us too, but we'll still maintain a response if it's within their jurisdictional boundaries.
Chief Edwards?
Thank you. I just wanted to add a little additional to your question. So we did engage Pyramid Lake back this fall when the operational group was coming together. And at that time, they'd said they did not want to be a part of the study. But to the point about the fires, BLM actually has the jurisdiction for any fire on the tribal land or wildfire. And so they would get the full response of the WFPP partner agency. So they're going to get a lot of resources for that. And even recently, as they're having challenges staffing, we get those updates daily, and we know that we're going to provide them that mutual aid to make sure that no call goes unanswered.
Great questions. Thank you so much for that presentation. We'll go ahead and close out 5A1 and move into 5A2.
Madam Chair, if I may, before you close out item 5A1, I do feel like I need to make some comments so that our records and our minutes of today's meeting are very clear. And so you saw on one of the slides mention of the North Lake Tahoe Fire Protection District, and I need to be clear that, and I believe that this board, but members of the audience, someone who may read the minutes at a later time, that the Truckee Meadows Fire Protection District does not provide fire protection services to all of unincorporated Washoe County. There are other fire agencies in unincorporated Washoe County, including the North Lake Tahoe Fire Protection District, and some other districts that through cooperation with Truckee Meadows Fire Protection District. So Washoe County, the unincorporated area is served, it is covered, but I think it's clear that the record reflect that Truckee Meadows is not the agency that's responsible for all of unincorporated Washoe County. Thank you.
Thank you for making that clarification. Now we'll close out 5A1 and move on to 5A2.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Cadence Matievich for the record. Item 5A2, presentation by Emergent Global Solutions to provide the board with an introduction to their firm, to advise the board on the approach and methodology that they will use to conduct the regional fire and EMS feasibility, efficiency, and service enhancement study, and to inform the board about the timeline, key milestones, and deliverables for the study. And so, Mr. Ghilarducci and Mr. Martinez, when you are ready, the podium is yours.
Great. Madam Chair, members of the board, chiefs, wonderful to be with you today. My name is Mark Ghilarducci, and I'm president of Emergent Global Solutions, is the firm that was chosen to do the study that we're talking about today. Emergent Global Solutions is and the group at large is a team of very experienced former fire, emergency services, county leaders, financial folks that are coming together to be able to do a comprehensive review from the Washoe County region and, kind of address all the things that the chiefs have talked about here this morning, as well as the what was outlined in the RFP, which we'll get to as we go through this presentation. Joining me is Rick Martinez. Rick is with Ardennis, is our partner organization in this. Again, very experienced group of folks. We routinely work together. We've worked both in and out of government. I'm a 40-year fire service, emergency services, most recently retiring as the Director of Emergency Services for the state of California. And have done in our inside and outside government work a number of these studies with regards to consolidation, standards of cover, feasibility studies throughout California and in other states. And as well, in our government service, actually did a lot of implementation of these kinds of projects, which we'll talk a little about today. With that, let me introduce Rick Martinez, and Rick's going to talk a little bit about some of the process as we move forward with that, and then we'll come back up and cover some other points.
Good morning. Let's see if I can operate this thing here. Mark talked a little bit about Emergent Global. Ardennis is a much smaller firm. I represent, we specialize in local government and emergency services. As he mentioned, I'm embarrassed to tell you this, and I'm not telling you this to be impressive, but I spent 35 years in the fire department and another 7 or 8 years in emergency services, and have been involved in a statewide nonprofit that serves fire victims and fallen firefighters. So I've got all in about 50 years in and about this business. My time in the fire service was pretty diverse also. I guess some might think I couldn't hold down a job. I moved around a bit. But I did spend, I'm from Sacramento County. I was born and raised there. And one thing that Sacramento County has is a history in fire service amalgamations. And I use the term amalgamation somewhat loosely because, as you've kind of touched on today, there are a number, and the chiefs have touched on, there are a number of processes of which you can amalgamate, bring together organizations to a single organization or a single focus. I was the fire chief for 10 years for the Sacramento Metropolitan Fire District. Let me start by saying 2 things. First of all, I'm not an expert. I've just been around a long time, and I've paid attention. And Metro Fire, as we call it back home, was an amalgamation of 17 fire departments over the course of about, actually not very long, 17 years, from 1983 to 2000. And the vast majority of those 17 fire agencies, I think there was 13 that came together from that in that period of time. And as a board member asked the question with respect to, yes, there's a number of ways to regionalize. Typically, contract for service, as I've come to understand, and I want to thank the chiefs for their historical perspective and information. We'll be getting into that into great detail over the next several months. But yes, contract for services are one way you can amalgamate a service delivery, as Truckee Meadows and Reno did for a period of time. In our case, Metro Fire went through a series of them. The two big pieces or differences were reorganizations and really consolidations, the forming of new, the bringing together of 2 organizations or multiple organizations into one, which is an annexation essentially of one of the other. And then the contract for services. We still have contractors for services in our county. The city of Sacramento, currently fire department, provides contracts to 3 independent special districts in the county and have been for well over 40 years. So there's a number of ways. We have some slides here, and I'm going to get in trouble if I don't at least say we have slides here, because that's a big deal, evidently. But our goal, and I'm not going to read you the slide, but our goal is pretty simple. We recognize that you've done a great deal of studies on fire emergency services in your community. We were actually involved in one 2005 here. And so we've got a little bit of background. But more importantly, I think what we recognize here is you've done a lot of work. We're not going to redo work for the sake of redoing work. We're going to take advantage of the studies that you've done. We will revalidate that information, refresh it where necessary, and come forward to study all the elements that you've talked to. The chief is correct. Well, they're all correct. But the Chief's correct. He mentioned two things that got my attention. They're the things I refer to a lot. I've been involved, as I said, we did two significant reorganizations in my time as a fire chief of Metro Fire. When I was first was hired, we had 13 active stations. When I left, we had 43. Like Truckee Meadows, we provided service to a good portion of the county of Sacramento and two cities. But it comes down to two really big pieces. It's going to be governance and whatever you want to call it, revenue, how you fund it. There's an element which is equally as strong as that how you structure the organization, an independent special district. There's a number of ways you can do that you can, but at the end of the day, it's going to be funding and who really controls the policy and funding. And we recognize that. I've been through it. I have stood before many cities, councils, and boards and commissions, and been on this end of and so I get it. And the way that we were successful, and believe me, Sacramento County isn't the end all be all. We just went through a few of these, is that we never lost sight of the community culture. You started this meeting today with a member of the public that brought forward a question. We know that stakeholder engagement is going to be critical to this process, not just the public, not just the fire departments, not just the electeds, but everyone. So stakeholder engagement is did I hit it twice? Is a key piece of this. Now, I think it's listed on probably the last slide. But so our process is pretty simple. There are 9 basic tasks that were contained in your request for proposal. Obviously, our proposal responded to that. I want to reassure you this is we read it and we intend on fulfilling the RFP in a meaningful way. What you don't need, and I'm not here to tell you what you need or don't need. I'm here to make some recommendations. Our collective team is. But what you really don't need is another study that you're going to put on the shelf. We recognize that what you want is you want to have someone wrap together all those previous studies in a contemporary fashion, working with the leadership of your department, hearing from the electeds from the 2 cities and the Truckee Meadows Fire Board and the public at large, and bring forward some recommendations to be as efficient as one can. Now, we haven't started the study. I don't know what the outcome is going to be. None of us do. But I can assure you this, we brought together people who have a great deal of experience, but most importantly, have a desire to give you what you want. I don't call this work anymore. I have a great deal of interest. In listening to the chief's presentation and your questions and comments associated with those, I'm invested in your outcome. We all are. I can tell you the members of our team, we've had a few discussions already. We're invested in your outcome. We want to bring forward for you a document which you can then evaluate what's appropriate for your community. There's not a one size fits all. There isn't one spot to go. What I suspect the outcome will be a graduated approach. If you want to do this, here's what we recommend. If not, this is another approach. You've talked about mutual aid, automatic aid. There was another one, enhanced aid. Yes. I do want to highlight the communication center, and I think you asked Chief White about, is there a value with 4? My opinion, after 50 years, no. You look at your fire department, your emergency services, whatever, it doesn't really much matter what it is. And really what you want to do is take and match the need with the resource as quickly as possible. If it takes time, if there's redundancy, usually it doesn't speed up the process. So that is a huge consideration. I can tell you, I had nothing to do with it, but in Sacramento County, we made moves a long time ago to unify dispatch and to unify a couple other things that go along with it. The radio system, being able to cross communicate amongst agencies, even when you have mutual aid, that's really critical. And then the computer-aided dispatch system, the pre-arrival instructions, all those things that go with advancement are going to be critical. We will be looking at that. So our milestones, as you can see on the slide, can you actually see these slides?
Mhm.
Okay. I meant to ask that first, sorry. We'll start with internal meetings this month. I'll be reaching out to the points of contact. And I should also, Cadence has been outstanding to work with. I do want to say thank you to her publicly. She has worked diligently on bringing your collective thoughts together and made it much easier for us that are trying to be responsive. So thank you to that. She's been poking along and got it. We're getting started. We'll be meeting with the chiefs and their points of contact very quickly. We will do some public feedback meetings. There'll be processes associated with that, not only virtual processes, but we're looking at other ways. And I have a smartphone. It's much smarter than me, but we will be looking for portals and ways for the public to engage and to provide information and their thoughts. And then through the summer, we'll be doing internal stakeholder workshops, previewing, as our recommendations or at least our understanding starts to take hold. And then we'll be doing a public presentation in September with a draft report. I also want to be clear, and I feel that my partner here is going to try to elbow me out, but I also want to be clear that we do want feedback. And today, when we were driving up, I was thinking, I have no idea what I'm going to say today. And then I was sitting there saying, I can't wait to get to the microphone. And I've got stuff scribbled all over my paper. But I do want you, first of all, your questions or comments today would be important, and I understand, you can't take action. Understand that too. But we're very interested in what you have to say, because I am recognizing there are 2 city councils and a fire board here that's really important. We think you're going to bring the comments and philosophy of your respective organizations to the forefront. Really important for us, because we do need to know that. What I also can assure you, there's no predetermined outcome. If you were to do a little research on me, and probably with AI, we probably put together an executive summary. I've been around for a bit. I don't think it's a one size fits all. And I think the world continues to evolve. And I mentioned community culture, organizational culture is really important. And while we'll look at the previous studies, we'll look at the previous relationships, we'll be really looking forward to see what would be most effective and efficient for you. And with that, did you have anything? No, you may just want to, you covered the deliverables, but if you have any questions about the deliverables. Yeah, if there are any questions on the deliverables, didn't mean to skate over them. One of the folks back home did this, so I'm going to make sure if they watch this thing that there we go.
Well, thank you so much for your introduction and for making the journey over here to present to us. I think it means a lot to our board that we have the opportunity to ask these questions. And I just have one on the deliverable slide, actually, and then I'll kick it down to Member Paul Anderson, and we'll work our way down this way. So on that slide, it says preliminary financial modeling scenarios. And then when I look at the RFP in section 3, that section pertains to financial modeling, and it says provide financial modeling, conduct a detailed cost analysis, and on the last bullet, include phased implementation costs. So I just want to kind of set what our expectations are for the deliverables, what we're going to see in this final product. Financials are very important to all 3 jurisdictions. As you know, the region is very much under constraints in that regard. So I think what this study is doing that many of the other ones hadn't is really digging into the layers of the finances. So can you please tell us what we're going to be seeing and if that's in line with the members of this body? I'd love to hear any feedback from.
I can't tell you exactly what you're going to be seeing in detail, but I can tell you what we'll do.
Okay.
We're going to look at the way you're funding your departments today, any opportunities that may be for new revenue, which I have to tell you before we get that's easier said than done. Are there ways to take what you're doing today and be more efficient on what it's costing you? But there's an element, having been through a reorganization or consolidation that then I lived under for 13 years. The proof is in the pudding. What you say, the values of what things cost, and then how much things are going to cost going forward is a little bit of an educated guess. So we will to the best of our ability. It's a little different, I suspect, with Truckee Meadows because it is a dependent district, and usually the revenue stream's a little easier to see. Municipal funding is a little different because having worked in municipal government too, what is in the department's budget may not be fully reflective of what the costs are. So in other words, sometimes there are certain costs that come out of the budget, post-budget adopting. So we're going to sort through all that and try to identify the revenue stream as you know it today, identify any opportunities for new opportunities for funding, and then identify any shifts you can make that would become more efficient using the dollar better, something like that. Obviously, employee costs are a big one. I can tell you in bringing together multiple retirement systems, as an example, things like that, unfunded liability, it goes on and on. There's debt. It's been my experience that with a special district, a fire district, it's easier to see the debt. And with municipal government, sometimes you have to figure out how you parcel overall municipal debt and how much of that would belong to the fire department. That's kind of the finance piece.
Okay. Thank you for the background. Member Anderson.
Thank you. First off, actually, I don't have a question. I don't think it's directed towards you guys, but first I just want to say thank you for accepting this challenge. I'm confident you will bring some great information to us to figure out as a community how we best move forward. Appreciate that. The question I do have is more procedural. So for those of us that are sitting up here, who are we to engage with, whether as time goes on, we have questions, concerns, or we're hearing from the public? Who should we be directing those to?
Madam Chair, I think I will try to take that. Cadence Matievich for the record. Member Anderson, there are, as we've worked through the scope of work with these two gentlemen and other folks at their organization, there are specific points in the study timeline at which you will get updates and reports. There are monthly reports. Those will be shared with you. I think specifically to your question of who do you communicate with, if you have information, I am always available to you as a point of contact to help facilitate getting to the right person, depending upon what the question might be that you would have or the member of the public would have. As I said, there will be times throughout this study when you will receive both public presentations from EGS, and I'm going to use that acronym. Sorry, gentlemen, that's a long name for your organization. So you'll receive updates both in written format and in public format. We do have built in there times when they can provide you with individual updates in the form of information. Of course, we will be mindful to be sure that we are not violating open meeting law during any of those. And so if there are questions, certainly you can always route them through me. But that doesn't mean that there can't also be dialogue between you and your consultants as they work through this process. And so I think probably best place to start is with me so that we can ensure if it's just a matter of getting you information or something, but if it's something specific technical that I can't answer, then I can help facilitate that communication.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
I would just add to Caden's comments that we will, as we unpack this process a bit more, have a standard point of contact. We really want the questions and information because that really, my experience, the refined product is when enough questions have been asked that we should be able to answer or not, if the case may be. So that's the first thing I want to assure you that we do want to be mindful also, and there will be a process when we I think it's after the draft report is first delivered to you all, of unifying your direction as a board so we don't get crossways. And I think there'll be a process for that through Cadence or whomever. I don't want to, we want to be responsive to you all as the board. So.
Thank you. Member Martinez?
Thanks so much, Madam Chair, and thank you for your willingness to accept this and putting together a successful RFP, for being here today to provide us with some information and your understanding of the requests and what you're hoping to deliver. I think I don't have any nitty-gritty requests for you, but overall, in terms of the slide you have up now and your deliverables, I'd just love to continue to emphasize the fact that during the last dissolution, there seemed to be problems with what you already mentioned, right? The funding and the governance. And it seems like governance was definitely part of that equation, and just highlighting the fact that as you work through your feedback loops and your input from all of the stakeholders, making sure that we keep all of the doors open, that if there are multiple avenues to look at in terms of the recommendations that you're going to provide for us, that those come forward, and that you don't limit the avenues that we can look at when it comes to your final recommendations for either legislative or regulatory changes that you're going to propose. So again, I just want to thank you for stepping up to the plate and for providing us with your services. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Of course. Vice Chair Rodriguez?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Again, like my colleagues, thank you guys for taking this and running with it. I do have a couple of questions. The public feedback section, I guess we're looking at spearheading that in March. Can you kind of give us like a little bit of snapshot what that might look like? Is that sending out emails to the residents? Is that town halls, or what does that look like?
I believe we're going to start with a town hall or somewhere early on, and in that process, be able to take feedback in that environment as well as open it up for folks to submit feedback, be it email or some other technologically advanced process, and then using other aspects such as social media, working with the departments and their network, as well as any community-based organizations, and then obviously the two cities and the fire district as well as the county. And so it's to get the word out and to try to encourage people to engage, provide us any information. It's been my experience when you get through the process, people are really concerned about their level of service. I mean, we all like to have our own thing until it's when we really need service. We really don't care who comes and takes care of us. We just need to be taken care of. And so there's that process, but that's the stakeholder engagement. And I wish I had more information. There's some really bright people on our team that's what they do. And I will be sitting there answering questions.
Okay, fair enough. And I'm sure I'm not, just one thing I know here locally is that sometimes we attend all three governments in our school district. Sometimes we try to get stakeholders or public input, and sometimes get, the public gets that fatigue. So I just kind of want to caution that. And also March is also here. We have a 2-week spring break at the middle to the end of the month. So just throwing that out there as well, so to speak.
On that note, part of what drives this schedule is the RFP, honestly. And so in order to get, I'm nervous, I'll be honest with you. I'm nervous about the speed of which we're trying to do this because I'm outcome based. Believe it or not, and thank you for thanking me for us for taking this on. It is kind of this is just kind of what I do, and I really, after doing it for a number of years, I really get engaged. Now I'm engaged with your process here. We want the most important thing for I think our team, for me personally and professionally, is to give you what you need and want, and so. I am struggling. We've had a lot of discussion about the timeline. We're going to work within that timeline as best as we can. I think the feedback will last longer than March, and until we have to finally put a bow on this. But and we're going to do our best to engage people.
Yes.
Cadence Matievit for the record. Vice Chair Rodriguez, we are mindful of that kind of feedback fatigue and the calendar. And I guess I would just echo Mr. Martinez there that we'll do our best to find the ideal date. I don't know that such thing exists, given all of the other regional boards and things. So we're going to do our best. It may be that we have to schedule the initial public feedback session, the sort of town hall forum, if you will, during spring break. We'll do our best, maybe not to do it right smack in the middle, but we do intend for that at least initial forum to be an in-person forum enhanced with other forms of participation coming up here as soon as we can get that calendar set. And then we will have another one of those in the fall. Once the draft study report is available, where it is presented, and the public will have an opportunity with you. That will likely be a joint meeting, right, at your public meeting, where the public will also be able to give comment. We have detailed in their scope of work the process by which and timelines for which written feedback will be reviewed. As they said. Built into this process is time for consolidated responses from your board and from the other stakeholders, the chiefs and others, back to them as we iterate through this process. But we are under a statutory deadline to complete this. And so we're going to do a lot of really great work in a very short amount of time. And so in some cases, that time constraint won't allow us to have maybe would have been the ideal date for some of these things, but we'll do our best to be as ideal as possible under the circumstances. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Matievich. Any follow-up questions?
Not really. I think you guys got a good idea of what this board is looking for different options, different funding streams, things like that. So I think you guys are tracking kind of what we're looking for. So yeah,
Great.
thank you.
Thank you. Member Brandy Anderson.
I have the nitty-gritty questions. Sorry. Thank you for being here today, and thank you for taking on this really important project. I have a question about the public feedback session. Are you going to be asking the public about how they feel about funding? Because specifically, we're here to learn about how to fund a variety of different options for this fire department. So what is the public feedback outcome that you're looking for?
Honestly, I don't have a great answer for you because we haven't rolled that back. I think we will most likely test the public's interest in funding. I say that because I have yet to study your existing funding stream, what the conditions are, because every community is a little different and every state's a little different. We have some conditions in California, which I don't think you have here. So that said, once we take a look, which is really out of the box this month, at your funding stream and what your funding options may be from an existing funding or potential legislation, then we'll probably test some of those theories as part of our stakeholders. We want to be a little careful with that, though, because we don't want to suggest that anybody associated with this study is looking to engage in increasing someone's.
Oh, I hear you.
So
But what is the public stakeholder I mean, I understand the risk, so why are we doing it?
It's to get input on the service they're having today, what they see as deficiencies or where they'd like to, it's just to let people be heard.
Okay, that makes sense. Okay, perfect. So what I'm looking for specifically is a variety of opportunities. I'm looking for an a la carte menu of how to pay for our fire service, whether we consolidate all three of our departments and we're all wearing the same uniform, whether we regionalize and all of us maintain our own identity and we regionalize services. We don't mess with anybody's CBAs. We don't mess with anybody's benefits. We don't mess with anybody's uniforms, but we regionalize services, which is mainly through policy, right? Policy and training. There's a variety of different ways that we can regionalize our departments without ever really affecting the men and women that are on the line. It can be through prevention. It can be through administration. It can be through regionalizing dispatch. It can be regionalizing training. There's a variety of things that we can be doing, and I want to know how much they cost if we just did that. I want to know how much it would cost to regionalize everything we do in and around the actual firefighting, right? And then we can start piecing together whether or not we go out together as one big department or we go out together. Two of us are going to join departments, but one of us is going to be more independent for whatever reason that is. Or I also want to know what it would cost to, this is what's going to cost if we regionalize these services. Like I said, whether it's mechanics, whether it's, prevention, whether it's training, and this is what it's going to cost if we don't. Specifically, the community needs to understand what it costs right now, the privilege of running 3 independent fire departments. We can't afford it, period. But the community doesn't know why. They don't know really how much we can't afford it. So that's what I would like these numbers to really tell that story. It's critical. We have to be able to tell the story, and we have to make operational decisions together as 3 different communities that are going to be in the best interest for service delivery and operational efficiency. So the reason I'm going on and on about the stakeholder and the community piece of it is that I think we need to be really honest with the community about what we are studying. And we have to be really honest with the community about what their outcomes are going to be. We can't go out to the community and be like, how do you feel about your fire service and what you're paying right now? All you're going to hear is what they're not perceiving that they're receiving. We have to tell them what opportunities they have to improve their delivery and improve their safety and service. And so March seems tricky to go out to a community with a real stitched together message about what you're studying without just alarming everybody for no reason. So apologies for the urgency and my passion about this, but we have to get this right the first time. And I think you're all hearing that the number one thing we need to do is trust each other. So every way that we move forward, we have to be able to trust that it was well thought out and the community understood clearly what our intentions were. So that's my first, sorry, it's less of a question, more of a diatribe. Second thing that I want to start thinking about operationally how much it would cost to do things like regionalize an overtime bridge. What I mean by that is we have 3 different departments. We've got potential brownouts because we don't have staff to put into a department. We've got other people in other communities that are neighboring that aren't working today, might want overtime, might be laid off currently and are a professional firefighter. I want to know how each one of our communities can afford to put those folks to work in each jurisdiction flexibly while we're all working together. So I need you guys to break your brains open and turn this inside out and tell us like all of the new and optimized ways we can work together to deliver the most, like the shortest response times with the right people on the right equipment, no matter where they are in this community. So do you think you got that?
That's our objective right there.
Okay.
And with respect to come back to your comments with respect to finances, excuse me, we should be able to. I say should because it's going to be dependent upon the data we receive. But we should be able to tell you what it's costing you for service today. We should be able then from that, once we know that, then we can tell you what these changes result in savings, how you can redeploy those savings to shore up areas where you may have need. We can do all those things. I mean, that's really, and then again, identifying the revenues so you know, I mean, there's one-time revenue, there's ongoing revenue, all those elements that tell you, okay, is this sustainable long-term? Within reason. And I'll cite one thing in California. California, in the late 70s, it changed the way property tax was calculated. And when they did it, it was just came down like, and so those agencies, which were fire districts, were one of the larger agencies, providers of service that was dependent upon property tax to fund. It shrunk overnight. And so it was a bit of a Rubik's Cube to try to figure out how you maintain service. So I say that if things happen like that, obviously you can't long-term predict what will happen. But overall, you should be able to predict, is this a viable long-term solution under this structure, governance model based on today's revenue stream? All that, yes, will be included. I don't envision that in March, we're going to go out to the public and say, hey, if you want this will cost you this. What we can talk about is what our objectives are in the study, the tasks, the deliverables, get their feedback. And I think as we go and we do reports back to you all, the rest will come out. We won't have enough information in March to be able to, I mean, if we did, this would be a 60-day study. We won't have all of that information to be able to say, this is what it's costing you. This is what's going to happen if you don't do this. That's part of the study. But
Okay.
we're working that. We want to give you what you need.
Okay, just the communication with the community is going to have to be well scripted because we need the community to understand the complexity and the importance of the problem and the long-term ability to fund the department that they have come to expect and deserve. One other thing I just wanted to call attention to and get on the record is that when you said that the long-term funding and ability with benefits, and I mean, public employees they're one of our most important investments in this country, and they're one of our most expensive. We can't afford an educated guess on what our department is going to cost moving forward. So we need a real sophisticated formula that understands the nature of what state legislatures do with not only retirement benefits and everything else. We need a formula for funding that can really handle the impact of decisions that get made that are unfunded liabilities from a state level for these departments or for this department moving forward. So I would like, when you come back to us, some kind of an educated discussion about how we are forecasting how we're going to afford our employees in the next 30 years, not just in the next 5, and how we are going to fund it.
That's great. I don't know we'll have that for 2 reasons. One, what happens over the next 30 years will partly be decided by folks like yourself that are sitting at a dais like this that decide what you want to do with benefits and salary. That's one aspect. Believe me, I worked in a situation that had a very distinguishable revenue stream. And near the end of my time there, the elected body decided to, in my estimations, exercise some generosity that long-term wasn't sustainable based on a 30-year look back. So
I'm assuming you'll use the 125 years worth of financials that we have to give you a model forecasting forward.
yeah, no, and I'm just saying, so there's that element, and then there's the element if the state legislature does want to make some changes, you may not know what they're going to do in 5 or 10 years. That said, we do look at the long-term sustainability based on what we know today, based on the structure also that you have today, the revenue stream structure, but also the potential for raising new money. In most places, it's pretty modest, whether through taxes or whatever, fees, it's just harder. And then there's usually I suspect that these three fire chiefs and their predecessors have tried every trick in the book to try to look for those new opportunities. But we'll look at all that. We obviously that's what we're here for.
I mean, that's why we're having this, that's why we have this study, that's why we have this board, is we are, as a community, collectively trying to go out and become one community as it relates to fire, not only our awareness, but our preparedness. And so it's up to us to sell the solution that you bring us, but I need the information in the solution that you bring us to be clear enough so that we can go articulate it to the community about why it's the right best choice. And so I have high expectations.
I heard.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Member Andriola.
Thank you. I really thought it was pretty interesting that we are all leaving with funding and governance as being something that seems to be common amongst all of your years of experience and studies. But I really think the fact that really it's about the community culture, Mr. Martinez, you mentioned that, it's about organization, but it's also about the expectation of every single one of the folks that we serve, period. So it's a culture of expectations as well. You know, the fact that there's some complexity to this is not to be taken lightly, but the reality is that when someone picks up the phone, they don't need to know the complexity. They need to know that it's going to be the closest call. The folks are professionally trained and that these, in some cases, are life or death. And their expectation is clear. I think their expectation is clear. I think some of the complexity may not be. And I think if most people really understood, I think it would be scratching their heads as well. So I think we all have high expectations. Many of the studies that were done, as the chair indicated at the beginning of this meeting, did not necessarily outline funding and what those options are, and more importantly, what the trade-offs are. And so I think it's really clear for all of us that there's a big job for you ahead. And I'm glad that you have a lot of data as well that was already done. So even though it's an aggressive schedule, I think that you have 3 experienced fire chiefs with a wealth of knowledge, a wealth of experience. You have models, for instance, like Southern California. You said California so much, I went to California. Southern Nevada as well. So there's a lot of best practices, but I think from my perspective, I think we all share the interest of serving the community first. And that's really important. And what is that going to cost? And what if we don't do it? I like the fact that you have an implementation framework for the funding strategy and implementation plan as part of the requirement of this. But I do have a question specifically on the insurance evaluation for proposed regionalization. What does that mean exactly, the insurance evaluation?
Madam Chair, I think perhaps I can help with this one.
Thank
Kaden
you.
Smatievich for the record. Member Andriola, you may recall that in SB 319, there was a requirement that the study consider impacts of the one or more proposed models that the study would bring you data on and information and recommendations on what the impact of that might be on the availability and affordability of fire insurance for property owners. And so that was included in the scope of your RFP, and it is also one of the technical tasks that we've included in the scope of work. Identifying changes in risk exposure resulting from the consolidation of governance, administration, and or operations, those components. So sort of looking at the models that will come as a result of the analysis and evaluating to the extent possible what the potential impact on availability and affordability of fire insurance would be.
Thank you. I like to the extent possible. So I think I'll highlight that point because that is going to be in and of itself probably another opportunity for a study. But having said that, I do think the fact that there is a lot of experience, and thank you for your presentation. Thank you for the thoroughness. I think my colleagues have already gone over a lot of detail, so I'm not going to repeat what was already asked. But I do think putting the community expectations is clear. And again, what is that going to cost? What does that look like? And what are those options that are both if we don't do it, if you will? I think Member Anderson already shared that. I too welcome that opportunity to really look at the choices, and that's really what you're doing, what the best practices are. And I think some of the history is also important. I do think that the fact that there was a mention of political culture as well. And I think being real in the study is helpful. And you all get to actually share what that is. And we all have the opportunity to read maybe what is a little hard to read. But I think you have to be real about what we're all facing and how important we all know this is. So thank you for your years of experience. Thanks for looking at all the data. Thanks for not reinventing the wheel. We can't be the only one that has experienced this. And I think that you've made that clear. And thank you, Madam Chair, for the opportunity.
Thank you so much. And just a final thought from me, as you know, this board is not authorized to mandate the creation of a consolidated fire district, and we're not authorized to levy new taxes or assessments. And as we go out to the public, I think that's really important to remind the public and our stakeholders that that's not what this body is to do. We're leaning heavily on you to meet these this ambitious timeline so that we have the information to then transfer that over to the governing body so that we can continue the discussion moving forward. So thank you for signing on for such a heavy lift, and we look forward to working with you moving forward. So have a great day. And any final thoughts if you would.
I want to close with two comments. First of all, the board member made mention of California. What I can tell you is a couple of commonalities that cross the state lines, multiple states. One is that, and the chiefs mentioned it, a few of you have brought it up, firefighters want to help people. That's what they do. And so the closest appropriate resource and moving every hurdle out of the way to get the closest appropriate resource in an emergency is really what firefighters do. They do it in California, they do it in Nevada, they do it in Oregon. They want to do that. So we all have that going for us. I think as a consumer, we all are potential consumers. Today, if I walk out here and fall down or we're in an auto accident out in the parking lot here, it's going to be Nevada firefighters, particularly, that are going to come to assist us. If it were my family, it's the same thing. That's what we all want. I mean, I think there's a lot of things that are very substantially similar. Let me just put it this way. So we come to you, we come to this project, recognizing community culture, recognizing that people need to be heard. So stakeholder input and looking beyond California, but beyond what are the best practices, what's worked. Someone mentioned Southern Nevada as an example. The Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department, I think that's what they're called, as a conglomeration of the police agencies in the greater Clark County area. I'm not sure how they did it. I'm not sure how they established their funding, but it happened to happen in Nevada. We will look at that just to say, oh, is there a lesson to be learned here? So I think anytime you're amalgamating any service, it's interesting. And when emotions run higher with emergency services, it's even more interesting. So we recognize it. Thank you for the opportunity. I'll turn it over to Mark if he has anything. But thank you for the opportunity to let us work with you. We are looking forward to it.
Thank you. We'll go ahead and close out item 5A2 and move into our final public comment, number 6. Ms. Matievich.
Madam Chair, as with your initial public comment heard under this item will be limited to 3 minutes per person and may pertain to matters both on and off the board agenda. However, action may not be taken on any matter raised during public comment periods until the matter is specifically listed on an agenda as an action item. Comments are to be made to the board as a whole, and again, the 3-minute limit will apply.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, do we have any public comment?
We currently do not have anyone signed in for public comment in the chamber.
All right. Hearing and seeing none, we'll close out item number 6 and we'll move into. Yes, my apologies. Anything on Zoom?
We do not currently have
Thank
anyone
you.
on Zoom either.
Thank you so much for the clarification. Board members' announcements, any requests for future items or requests for information? All right. Seeing and hearing none, we'll close item number 7, and that leads us into adjournment. We are adjourned.